Welcome to another live edition of the Bogosity podcast. This is your host, Shane Killian. Joining us for the moment at least is Jacob Morris.
Hello.
And Daniel Wilcox.
Goodbye.
We may have Charles Thomas coming in here in a little bit as well. I'm not sure about that, but yeah, we're doing it live again. Turns out we had 2 filming blocks in a row for The Woodstock, a short film that my wife and I co-wrote. And so in keeping with my policy of not canceling the podcast 2 weeks in a row, if I can at all help it, we're doing it live. Unfortunately, with all the work I had to do last week getting ready for the shoot, I only had time to work on Biggest Bogani Mitter and Idiot Extraordinaire, so I asked my wonderful co-hosts to contribute their own stories for News of the Bogus, so we've got a couple good ones for you there. But before we do that, I just want to remind you that you can pick any of Audible's 180,000 audiobooks to get for free when you go to audibletrial.com/Bogosity. And you'll also get a free month's membership to Audio. Gotta love it. Audibletrial.com/Bogosity. So let's start with Jacob. You're going to tell us about John Oliver?
Yeah, I wanted to bring up John Oliver's segment on charter schools.
I can sense that this is just going to be so rational and have no misinformation at all in it.
Yeah, before we begin, Shane, how about you go over what charter schools are?
Well, basically, let me just go over the school system in the U.S. because I know we have a lot of foreign listeners. Here we usually have 2 kinds of schools, public and private. The public schools are government-run, and your state and local taxes and also some of your federal taxes go to pay for your schools. And so you're required to send your child to school, and if you send it to public school, you have to send it to your particular local public school. If you want to pay for private school, you can, but it's really expensive, and you don't get any of your tax money back. Charter schools are kind of a way to give a little bit of school choice in the situation. So a charter school is a public school, but it's done independently of the government, and the way it works is when you put your child in a charter school, the amount of tax money that your regular public school would have gotten for those goes to the charter school instead. So in theory, at least, it's the same level of per pupil funding. Of course, they play all sorts of fancy games with accounting, so they actually don't get as much per pupil as the government schools do, but that's the idea at any rate. So it's just kind of a way of getting a little nudge, at least, in the direction of school choice.
Yeah, that's...
Wait, are we all supposed to be recording separately like usual?
No, I'll just get it on my end.
Sorry.
Okay. I just wanted to, because last time we did this, my audio came through really kind of crappy, and so I figured I'd
like
just...
now with the Dalek thing?
Oh, am I sounding like a Dalek again?
I mean, you've been that way for a while.
But anyway, so recording it on my end, then at least the MP3 audio that gets sent out to the subscribers will be. So if you're listening to the audio here and it's terrible, and then you can say, oh, I can't listen to that, then just pop over to podcast.bogosity.tv, listen to it there once it comes up. That's usually 6 p.m. Eastern on Sundays. So.
Okay,
So anyway, go ahead.
Reading from the Reason magazine, which calls his rant clever, glib, and uninformed. So, Oliver Stephen
That
was
sounds like most of John Oliver, actually.
Yeah. And sometimes you get things right. Sometimes. Broken clock and all. So yeah, echoing the talking points of major teachers' unions and liberal interest groups, such as the People for the American Way and the NAACP, Oliver attacks charters for being unaccountable to the local and state authorities, which isn't true. All state charters have various types of oversight rules built to them.
Yeah, they have to meet all of the same requirements as the other state schools. They have to a lot of times they have to use the same curriculum. Their students have to go through the same testing and all of that.
Yeah, draining resources from traditional public schools, which presumes tax dollars for education belong to existing power structures. And
it also ignores the fact that you're also pulling students out of it. So it's not like they're having to do the same with less money for the same number of students. You're taking those students out of that system and putting them in charter schools.
And skimming students. In fact, charters teach a higher percentage of racial and ethnic minorities than traditional public schools, and they serve a higher percentage of economically disadvantaged kids. Which is not to say that Oliver is completely wrong in his analysis. For instance, some charter schools were badly run or were shut down. But he thinks the shutting down part is a bad thing, which is actually
we had one nearby, kind of a little more in the northern part of the state from me, shut down a few years ago. And one of my friends from high school is just Mr. Liberal Progressive and hates charter schools and everything else. And he was pointing it to me going, see, this is why charter schools are bad. And I'm like, no, this is why charter schools are good. Because you know all of the other charter schools are going to be looking at that school going, what did they do wrong and how can we avoid it? And I mean, I've found all sorts of schools around the state that were doing the same kind of thing, the same kind of funky financing and the same sort of favoritism in hiring and everything. Of course, nothing happens to them, so they don't have an incentive to stop doing that.
I think the general assumption seems to be, like, it's sort of like if they were public schools, if, like, the one public school in your area shuts down, you're screwed.
Well, there's still a public school.
Yeah, there's always a public school you can go to.
And the thing is, unlike bad public schools, bad charter schools get shut down. But the bad public school is still around. But yeah, and as the article continues, he's also right that on average, charters perform about the same as regular public schools.
Generally, I think they perform better, especially when you consider, like I said, they do get less spending per pupil. But really, I think that whole idea, that's not really the way I think we should look at it, because as a parent myself, when you're looking around and say, okay, what school do I send my child to? You're not saying, okay, what's the national average for this kind of school? You want to know, hey, of all the schools in my area, which one should I send my child to? You know, it doesn't matter. Okay, here's a charter school. Well, nationally, charter schools are going, no, we don't care about that. What's that charter school doing? That's what we care about.
Yeah, and I guess he likes to ignore the fact that a lot of parents and kids really want to get into these charter schools for some reason. I don't know why.
Well, and it's like you were saying earlier about the minorities. They really want to get in because they really get the short end of the stick when it comes to the public schools. They get sent to the crappiest schools. And generally the way it works is it's called a race to the bottom. These schools perform so lousy that their results are just horrendous. So then they go to the state and say, oh, well, that means we need more money, because obviously if we had more money, we'd do a better job. Of course, that's not how it works out, but they give them the more money. And they're incentivizing failure. That's really what they're doing.
So that seems like a fairly poor incentive structure.
Yeah, it's really bad. So really, you have these poor people.
I'm here. Sorry.
Hello. You have these poor kids, these minority kids. The parents really want another choice for them, so they're more likely to go in. And generally, the charter schools don't have much of a choice about, who they can take. It's usually done by a lottery, and since it's a public school, they can't say, oh, well, we're not going to take them because they're poor or whatever. And most of them don't want to. Most of them say, those are the kids we want.
Well, that's the issue here about the whole charter school situation. They are like, oh well, the public school. Well, I was raised public school, so I came out fine. That's it's the anecdotal evidence thing. It's saying the same thing about spanking and everything else.
Yeah, it's just
the people who say I came out fine from a public school are usually the people who didn't, and I don't know if he knows that or not. I think you could have used some better education there.
Yeah, and it's funny about that whole it's people who don't really know about ignorance. There's a lot of ignorance about charter schools. I even talking about homeschooling. And people are saying, oh my God, homeschooling, they don't know anything, even though study after study show that people who actually do homeschooling are a lot smarter and more well adjusted to, people, for, business and everything else than people who go to public school.
But unfortunately, that's not an option for things like poor parents, where you might have a single-parent household or one where both parents have to work to keep the bills paid. The homeschooling is not really an option for them.
Yeah, and again, the arrogance. Once again, the arrogance of people are saying school should be this, that, and the other. And their solution to bad public school is just throw money at it, which again has not.
Before you.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean, though. That's the whole look of it. Like, well, just throw some money at it.
So it gets better in this article.
Okay, go ahead.
Towards the end of Oliver's next segment, he takes Governor Kasich to task for saying that having charter schools introduces the same kind of competition that two competing pizza shops would have in a small town. Free market competition, supply and demand. I mean, he makes fun of Oliver makes fun of Kasich for saying pizza shop for some reason, and then he goes into why schools don't follow the normal laws of supply and demand for some reason.
Because potatoes.
Yes,
That's public school.
Because government is special.
Yes, and it continues over and over again, and it doesn't matter, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't matter how much evidence or proof or whatever you bring into the table. It is just something as well. The government has, they're like, well, the government is like they say. Government is us. No, it's not. The government is never. It's not you. The government is.
You shouldn't take news from comedians.
No, the government is those politicians. Yeah, the government is basically politicians who get handouts from the rich people, and they get their welfare, their buyouts, and everything else, and we the plebs get breadcrumbs. It's been like this since the first time government was created, or anything else like this. It's always has been this way. So here's hoping we will finally snap out of that system soon.
What else does he say there, Jacob?
So yeah, that's about it for the Meyer-Bridge version of the story.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much the same misinformation they always say about charter schools. None of it's true.
It's not like we have institutions that teach critical thinking.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
They don't even teach civics in schools no more.
Yeah.
They taught civics when I was in high school.
They don't. They barely teach them in college.
And yet, gender.
Although I think that would be a good thing.
So math
colleges are like these days.
Let's get in colleges, math courses are optional. Gender studies is mandatory.
Yeah, that's the way it's going.
Yeah, that's why we don't. That's why they don't teach civics anymore.
Yeah. Just stomp your feet real loud and cry. Then that will make laws change, which is not the case. It has never been the case. It takes. Not just, people say, well, what about, the marchers and Martin Luther King? Like, no, he actually talked to the politicians. He talked to them, break bread. He understood the, in civics and everything else. He told people not only to mob, also vote, do things in the community, all these other things. Seemed to just think like it was just the marching and just holding your breath and being, that sort of thing. No, it wasn't that. It was a whole coalition of that. Nowadays, people they don't understand anything about civics or anything about how government works. People, if you ask them, they don't even know who was in the Supreme Court. They don't know what the three branches of government. They don't know people in their own local government. So, again, people would be all mad, but they don't even know anything going on in their own neck of the woods. So,
yeah. But a place where you can get a good education in history, logic, and economics is libertyclassroom.com. A lot of it for free, but if you want to get the benefits of a paid membership, just use the promo code Bogosity in all caps for a special $11 discount. So go to libertyclassroom.com and use the promo code Bogosity.
Yeah, I get it. Don't have time to edit your ads in.
I'm trying to keep them quick because it's live. And so, Charles, you're going to give us what reasons measles is better than autism? What?
Oh, I actually discovered this. It was shared to me on Facebook, actually. And this right here, and be warned, people, this will make you want to punch a wall. And
oh, the headline did that.
Oh, yeah. And it's right here, and the link will be somewhere in the description. And please, again, there will be a lot of rage in this article. So here it is. They say, quote, they say for the vast majority of children, measles is a mild illness that passes quickly. Children with autism deal with lifetime struggles, which is true, as I'm a high-functioning autism, but I just hate the fact that they use autism as a virus or as a sickness. That that the whole myth, and I will keep saying it is a myth. And say, oh, what about the CWC whistleblower action, which has already been disproven multiple times, and in fact, it's now looked at autism, and let's see, I looked this thing up. It was actually scientists have found that it's more of a gene that is in the human body and everything else, like
it actually seems to be a whole collection of genes, and apparently some of them are in the mitochondria and some are in the X chromosome, and there may be a couple other places.
So basically, it's different series of various.
It's a whole bunch of different traits that all come together at the same time. Is basically what it is.
Exactly.
Various different mutations that aren't really linked to a particular source.
Yes, and it is something that it is really disturbing about this whole this whole anti-vaccination BS that so much. In fact, it has been again over and over. The CDC, multiple other sources have said that vaccines do not. There have been no link to autism and vaccinations, and
actually there can't be because even though they don't know exactly what the cause of autism is, it is at the very least prenatal. By the time you're born, it's already too late, and it's probably early brain development in the first trimester, maybe even in the first 3 or 4 weeks.
And it's a shame that most of the presidential candidates, Trump and Dr. Joe Stein and others, who are JC say, well, vaccinations and everything else.
Actually,
well,
let me correct you on that. Dr. Stein has come out and said that the claim that she is against vaccines is a misinformation. It's not true. She is absolutely in favor of vaccines, and I was really glad to hear her say that.
Thank you. That's to me the low bar of how the whole vaccine. It just seems that we have that low bar. Same thing with Gary Johnson, former Governor Gary Johnson, who said the same thing. But what does that say that it got to this part? That this myth, this destructive and terrible lie, has gotten this far. That is actually affecting policy. That is actually affecting lives to this point. And then you look at this article. And everything right here. It says the reasons, 5 reasons why measles is better than autism. And even better before that, it says, don't tell me you'd rather take your chances of autism than to expose your child to measles.
Hey, quick question, because I don't really know these statistics on this. What is like a good estimated death toll for measles?
Measles? Let's see.
It's not much, and I think nowadays you just have those kind of little bursts because measles has a very high, what's called the R0, which means that you have an infected person under natural conditions. What are the average number of people that person would go on to infect? And with measles, it's something big like 15, so it's really hard to reach herd immunity with that. So you get these little pockets of it, at Disneyland or wherever, where even just a tiny little drop in the vaccination rate and it comes back. But I think nowadays, as long as you catch it early, I think it's pretty survivable.
But
you're going to have lifelong problems from it. It's not like they say, oh, it strengthens your immune system. Measles doesn't.
No.
You have a weakened immune system for life with measles and all sorts of other chronic problems that can plague you throughout your life.
But that's what I was getting at. Even assuming that it's a relatively low casualty rate, how does that compare to, say, the death toll of autism?
There is no death toll. There is
Precisely.
nothing.
It's not a fatal condition.
Not directly.
Precisely.
Oh, God. And besides, here's one of them, funny enough, about lifelong, the whole immunity. It says, you know what's great about getting measles? Once you have it as a kid, your people will cry an immunity to it forever. But yet, the best way to do it is, have a vaccination so you don't have to get measles. So.
Yeah. And it is true, you won't get measles again, but like I say, your immune system will be weaker, and so even things like the common cold are going to hit you a lot harder.
Oh, here's another one. But speaking of that, but this thing disagrees with you. They say, quote, measles strengthens the immune system. It says, you see, our bodies were actually created to get these regular, normal workouts through childhood. Just like our muscles need to grow and become strong, so our immune systems need to be used in order to bulk up and fight off invaders.
That is only true. That is only true with environmental germs. The kids eating dirt, licking the carpet, whatever. The regular environmental germs, that does not apply to pathogens like measles.
Well,
I'm assuming your kids did those things?
Not exactly, but I understood the science well enough that I wasn't one of those that I had to try to keep them away from absolutely every germ ever.
And here's, this is, instead of catching what used to be a normal child illness, most kids are being vaccinated against them, providing a false sense of immunity and overloading the immune system.
That's crap.
Okay.
That's crap. Walk outside for 2 seconds, and you will be exposed to far more antigens that are in the entire vaccine schedule.
Uh-huh. Oh, and here's something. The next one is autism causes long-term damage.
Damage to what?
It says right here, for the vast majority of children, measles will be a short-term, uncomfortable illness. They'll get a fever, they'll have a rash, and they'll get to stay home from school, skip their homework and everything, yada, yada, yada. It says, being sick isn't necessarily fun, but it's a rite of passage for childhood. Once the child immune system fought off the measles, thereby receiving lifelong immunity, they're back at them in no time. It says, but a child gets autism. Again, autism is a virus. There's no easy bouncing back. A bowl of chicken soup ain't going to solve this problem.
Does that work for cancer too?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I was pretty sick for like 2 weeks once, and the chicken soup did wonders.
I'm trying to remember what my mother said it was. I think it was measles. I might have to verify that with her, but she was talking. Maybe it was mumps. It was one of those. She was talking about how it was fairly common, growing up, going to school in the 40s, how it was fairly common for kids to get those things, and there were kids who were crippled for life, there were kids who became deaf for life, there were kids who were brain damaged for life because of these diseases.
Exactly. Just it says but funny enough, she says those soup can help to heal autism. I'm like, okay.
Wait, what? What is the source on this?
There is no source. They just point to other blogs.
If you want to know how credible they are, Charlie, read out the URL at the top, the domain name that this is posted on.
modernalternativehealth.com.
Now, doesn't that just fill you with confidence?
I'm just going to, oh, man. And it gets better, people. It keeps getting better. It says, measles is easier to cure than autism.
Autism isn't something you cure.
There's actually no cure for measles. Know why?
It's like trying to cure someone of being gay. It's just kind of the same sort of thing.
Oh, yeah, gosh. well, we're gonna pray they're not praying they're not praying for the autism go away. They're just saying that they're getting rid of the vaccine. So the evil vaccinations are gone, so we can have that means no more autism, even though that wasn't the case. You know how there were more cases of autism because they have different tests. They have more intrusive tests over time. Like we can monitor these things. And autism is not a death sentence. It's not something that people have. It's a neurological condition that it says about how people can get things right or wrong and think differently or do things differently. And they're not like like, oh my gosh, they're evil people and such. Myself included, I have a different way of thinking and different ways of brain patterns and such, but I still live a very functional life. I mean, they act like autism is basically like, well, your child's basically going to be invalid and just it's over with it, which is completely and utter BS.
This actually reminds me of this video that he's an animation critic, Mr. Enter, if any of you ever heard of him.
Oh, yeah.
He did a response to an Autism Speaks video.
Oh, I saw that. It was glorious.
Yeah, I've actually, a few years ago, back in high school, I was diagnosed with Asperger's myself, so...
For those who aren't aware, my son's autistic.
Oh, by the way, oh goodness, they actually have a link saying autism can be cured. Oh, goodness gracious. And it's a link right to their same website.
What are they selling?
They say that, exactly, it says, quote, that the autism is cured, and you know how it can be this, yada, yada, yada. Gut health, it says, eliminate environmental toxins. I don't know what that means. It basically says, no, just ditch the baby soaps and lotions, stop using vaccinations, and eat healthier from stuff, eat healthier, and supplements with like fish oil, probiotics, and vitamins.
My mom still makes me take those.
Joy. And
I think are okay, kind of like in the short term. If you've got a digestive problem, you can take one or two of them and kind of get over it. But they don't really do you any lasting benefit.
They're actually. This is. I'm just. By gosh, this website is full of just full of ignorance and destructive ignorance. And this is
Hey, I'm sure that this material has been thoroughly tested and researched by experts like Dr. Oz and Food Babe.
And Joseph Mercola.
Okay, this is like, and honestly, the last one. Measles complications are uncommon.
Uncommon?
Yeah. And you know why they're uncommon? Because we vaccinated and measles was gone for the most part in the country. Yeah, except in the Middle East because, the U.S. government, Shane pretty much pointed that out. Like, didn't you say that last hangout? The reason why we couldn't have those, the polio and all these other things rampant in the Middle East countries because we were trying to track Bin Laden and everything?
Well, that was the case in Pakistan. They ran a fake vaccination drive. Then they were really taking DNA samples trying to track down Bin Laden. And, of course, now hardly anyone in Pakistan is getting vaccinated for polio, and it's, I think, one of 2 countries that actually has polio. And
now that just strikes me as fairly sadistic.
Yeah, it just, again, this is like a really, this is just really horrible stuff that is based on misinformation, and it's just like, and the latest instrument shows like 1 in 45 children have autism. Like, okay, fine. That means that their test right now to know what type of autism, and they think autism is
that number. I'm sure that number is high. I'd love to see how they were calculating that.
That's the CDC. So again, I will always question this stuff. It's from National Health Interview Survey. That's what they're linking to about this, how all these kids have autism, but they don't know about what type of autism. They just say autism as just a blanket statement like autism means your kid's going to be invalid or autism means this. No, there are cases. They're high functioning, very high functioning, little trace or that type of thing. And even if they did have autism or anything else like that, that doesn't mean that they're defective or there's something they're defective and you just like you have no hope for them or anything else like that. That's horrible. That's a horrible way to treat children who have this. This is a very these learning disabilities. You're basically reinforcing them that they're somehow broken, which they're not. They're not broken.
Next thing you know, they're going to be advocating the very progressive idea of eugenics.
Yeah.
Oh wait, we have one more. Exactly says no. After all this, it says, is measles better than autism? You bet. As you can clearly see, the odds of catching measles, especially suffering from complications, are much lower the chance of being diagnosed with autism.
Because people are vaccinating you, morons!
And it says, and not only that, but once you get over measles, you move on in better health.
If I may take a moment just to vent my frustration at a certain sort of leftist woo.
Go right ahead.
These various left woos, like alt-netters and stuff, they're very different from the right woos in a way that makes them more like the right religious woos, no offense, Charles. That makes them much worse because they had this pretense of being very scientifically minded. They either claim to or actually believe that they're supporting scientific fact when they're just believing in their belief.
Being hair tampons up there, you know what?
Yeah.
And again,
that South Park episode.
Yeah, but I look at this website, but then again, it is they say it's time we start taking chances on our children's health. Even though this whole thing is a big risk, an unnecessary risk on your child's health, and and whatever it says, and making decisions are based on well-calculated propaganda. Look at the facts and make the best choices for your kids based on the real risk and not hyped up figures and half truths. So basically, delete this thing from your favorites page, people. You'll be a lot happier. But yet, you know what? Here's interesting. I looked at the comments, and I know that's a dangerous thing to do, but there's actually one person out there who actually got through. Angela says. Right here says, since the measles vaccine doesn't cause autism, we don't have to choose. And then it gets
Imagine that.
Yeah. And yet she fought back saying the MMR doesn't cause autism, according to scientific consensus. Also, measles can cause lifetime disability or death. We don't see it in big numbers in the U.S. anymore because most people are vaccinated. Herd immunity is working. We vaccinate our children because we feel the risk of vaccinating are less than the risk of the disease. Beautiful, Angela. That is beautiful right there. He says, it's like then no. So why don't you watch this this old documentary called Facts and read these and all these other stuff. And then she came with the last statement, which is beautiful. It says, I prefer to get my information from credible sources, not documentaries directed by fraudulent ex-doctors. See, there is some good in the comments.
Yep.
Right there, people.
Yes, and you definitely should protect yourself and your children with vaccines, just like you should protect your online passwords with LastPass. Gee, aren't segues fun? Where you can randomly generate secure, unique passwords for every website you visit, and even get a secure audit of your passwords, all for free. And if you sign up using the link password.bogosity.tv, you'll get a free month of LastPass Premium, which includes priority customer support. That's password.bogosity.tv.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now let's recombobulate this week's biggest bogon emitter. And this week, this is going to be a technical one, but it goes to a couple of hackers going by My123 and Slipstream, and pretty much to everyone who misreported this, and it has to do with an exploit in what's known as secure boot. In order to boot up your computer, there's a piece of hardware that runs. It used to be called the BIOS, now it's called UEFI, and UEFI is set up, among other things, to have the secure boot option. And what happens is that on your hard drive, the very first sector of the hard drive is the master boot record. It has a tiny little piece of software that runs that gets the operating system going. That's called the bootloader. And what can happen is if you get the wrong kind of malware or something like that and it tries to put a rootkit on there, it can actually override that master boot record. And so whatever...
Wait, wrong kind of malware? Isn't malware by definition...
Well,
that's from the NSA.
There is malware that you can actually scan for and clean off of your system. But what this malware does, since it lives in the master boot record, it runs before the operating system even gets going. There is no chance for the operating system to stop it. There is no chance for your antivirus to stop it. Nothing can stop it. It has full administrative access to everything in your computer, and it is terrible. So secure boot is a way of not allowing that to happen. So if the boot sector gets changed in a way that the UEFI system says, hey, this isn't valid, this isn't cryptographically signed the way it should be, it's not going to let it boot, and it can even revert it back to a known good bootloader. So that's good. That protects us. One big complaint, though, when it first came out was that Microsoft controlled it all, and having one entity controlling a single point of failure, that's usually pretty bad. And also it was doing things like if you wanted to install Linux on your computer, you had to turn off secure boot, even if, and a lot of times the BIOS wouldn't let you turn off secure boot, so you were just cut off from installing Linux. Mm-hmm. So, but for most people it's been good, and it's been good at stopping these rootkits. But now, according to these hackers, and what's been reported en masse, there's actually an exploit that makes this completely vulnerable. And I'm not going to link to this original blog post because, trust me, it's terrible. It's everything that's ever been wrong with the internet ever. There's this Starfield background. There's cheesy music that autoplays. The text actually shakes around on the screen.
So basically an early version, so basically a MySpace page from around 2008, right?
Only less readable.
Dang.
Yeah. I mean, the only way you're going to read this thing is to hit Control-A and then copy and paste it into a text editor. And even then, it's very confusingly written and hard to follow. But the hackers wrote, quote, "You can see the irony. Also, the irony in Microsoft themselves provided us with several nice golden keys, as the FBI would say, for us to use for that purpose." About the FBI, are you reading this? If you are, then this is a perfect real-world example about why your idea of backdooring crypto systems with a secure golden key is very bad. Smarter people than me have been telling this to you for so long, it seems you still have your fingers in your ears. You seriously don't?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
You can't make a key that just works for the FBI.
Microsoft implemented a secure golden key system, and the golden keys got released from Microsoft's own stupidity. Now what happens if you tell everyone to make a secure golden key system? Hopefully you can add 2 + 2. And we've agreed with that sentiment many times on this podcast and still do, but the fact is,
I think that's expecting a little much of them, to be honest.
But the fact is, with regards to this exploit, none of it is true. Microsoft did not have a golden key. Nothing like that got released. And yet, it was just passed on incredulously by The Register, Wired, Tom's Hardware, TechDirt, SecurityNewspaper.com, Emergent Chaos, Network World, Ars Technica, Reason.com, and all sorts of others. They just took the hacker's word and passed it on, including a lot of people who should know better, from Hacker News all the way to Bruce Schneier. They all fell for this.
Oh, It's not like the movies, right? Because someone could just basically just type in a keyboard and then boom, they hack everything and such like that. It's not like that.
No. Now there is a problem, but I want to say that I'm not, being uppity and saying, oh, those terrible people fell for it, because I almost did too. When I first read this, I put it in as a story to cover in News of the Bogus. The first one I know of to uncover the truth about this was Steve Gibson of Gibson Research in episode 573 of his Security Now podcast. And even then, I haven't seen any of these other people retract their earlier claim or explain exactly what's going on. Gibson actually managed to make his way through that very confusingly written blog post and figure out what they actually discovered. It wasn't a golden key. Nothing like that was released. But there is a severe exploit in Secure Boot. It will allow older UEFI Secure Boot managers to be tricked into running a rootkit, which of course is exactly what they're supposed to prevent. And according to Gibson, the Windows 10 version 1607 Redstone release, which is that anniversary update everyone was talking about, and which totally hosed all my settings, so thanks a whole heap, Microsoft. Jeez. Anyway, it added a new supplemental secure boot policy that can allow for test signing of development code, which could be malicious rootkits, etc. But this newer update, version 1607, now it's all properly managed, and so as long as you have a recent UEFI, and as long as you've updated to the anniversary version of Windows 10, then it's all fine and dandy. But previous boot managers don't know about it, and they'll be accepted when they shouldn't be. And I don't know if they can be updated or not. And I don't know if previous versions of Windows are going to be updated or not. If they're not, then all these computers are going to be vulnerable forever. So
they're immunocompromised.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think Charles is compromised.
Yeah. I'm just hitting his mute there for a second. All right.
Okay, I think he's good.
Yeah. So anyway, that's what it does, and so it's a pretty bad exploit. But these hackers misrepresented that exploit to try and push an agenda. And even though it's an agenda I agree with 100%, as does every rational person with any understanding of computer security, using Bogosity to get there is the wrong way to go about doing it.
Well, yeah, that's the issue there. You got honesty is the best way to beat any type of. It's the end of the day. It's the best way. The foundation. That's how you do honesty and truth are the foundations. You have to have those, because without it, no matter how noble your goal is, how progressive or whatever your goal is, if your foundation is built on deceit, lies, and trickery, it will crumble and it will crumble and it will destroy itself, and we'll be right back to square one, or even in a worse place. So the best thing we have to do is have a structure of honesty and truth.
And it's not like we've been exactly wandering around looking for an example of this. I mean, a while back on the podcast, we talked about Lenovo laptops where they had basically done the same thing. They were putting ads into secure websites by putting their own root certificate in there. That's like a golden key, and that got to hackers. And Avast Antivirus is doing this as well, because they're trying to check all of your websites to make sure you don't get malware. But guess what? Their root certificate got released, and now if you're running Avast Antivirus and you've got that root certificate in there, anyone can come in and hijack any of your secure connections. So it's not like we're running around looking for examples of this. There are plenty of examples. This just isn't one of them.
So what antivirus would you recommend, by the way, if Avast is pretty much
just
compromised?
Windows Defender. Windows Defender. You use the one built into whatever operating system you're using. Don't run a third-party antivirus.
So the best thing is Windows Defender. Great.
The best thing, like if you're on, I don't know which one's built into Mac OS 10, but whichever one's built into whatever operating system you're running. Because so many of them, I mean, first of all, they're trying to get money from you, and they love giving you a lot of false positives to try and scare you. That's been happening. They're doing stuff like putting in their own root certificates that get compromised, so it's just not worth it.
So I should basically, you know, and some people who probably listen and say, well, I love my Avast or Norton or whatever. Just the best thing you do is just use.
Well, they're wrong.
Who uses Norton anyway?
I don't know.
My dad loves it, by the way. So, and he's a computer IT guy, so I defer to him. So yeah.
Norton used to be really great back in the day, but.
Well, yeah, but hey, I use you know, sometimes I use Norton, sometimes I have like Windows Defender, so I might just go back to Windows Defender or something like that. So
yeah, and just crank all your security settings up to 11. You should be pretty good as long as you're not doing anything risky. Stay away from the seedier parts of the internet. Don't open attachments. Don't click links in emails. All that sort of stuff.
So you're telling us to Spinal Tap our computer.
I mean, I don't go, but then again, everyone's had this whole mystical thing about the dark web and everything else. But at the end of the day, it's just websites, right?
Yeah.
That's just amazing. In any era and everything else, the mystique and mystery and such, it always builds into this like defined myth. We always make into these myths, into these huge, like, oh my gosh, should we go there or not? We build them up into our minds. It's very interesting. In any area, in every situation, we always build these like myths and everything else, from governments to things like the dark web or all these types of stuff. It's very interesting stuff. Someone actually write a book about that.
Oh, plenty of people have. Yeah.
The myths we make up and things like that. Just interesting to say the least.
So that makes my 1, 2, 3 and Slipstream this week's biggest bogon emitter. And our next story is going to deal with cybersecurity as well, and it's really amazing how much you can protect yourself from by using a VPN. A VPN encrypts that first leg of your connection, so you can't be spied upon by other people in the coffee shop or hotel or even by your ISP. More than that, you can even make yourself invisible to local hackers so they can't connect to your computer and hack their way in. And a good one like BoxPN doesn't log connections so no one can find out what you've been up to. And you can even secure your complete privacy by purchasing it with Bitcoin. So get BoxPN for as low as $2.99 a month by going to vpn.bogosity.tv.
And this is where you guys will be glad I came in.
Oh, okay. Well, you don't have an echo generator, though, do you? And now let's dechlorinate this week's
Idiot Extraordinaire!
And just like that, everyone
before the filtering.
and just like that, everyone with headphones died.
That was actually fairly short by my usual standard.
Yeah, but you know what? Much appreciated. I could try, but if I tried that, I think I would probably break the snowball I'm using because my voice is like so deep.
So this week it goes to the Democratic National Committee, but I guess I should also thank them for giving us another data point as to how clueless politicians are about cybersecurity. So we have the DNC email links and the DNC and the DNC hacks, and they want to protect themselves. So they created a cybersecurity advisory board to up their security and prevent future hacks. The thing is, not a single member of that board is an actual cybersecurity expert.
Oh, I'm not surprised, you know.
Yeah, you've got a former acting secretary for the DHS, a lawyer, a former CTO for the federal government, and former deputy CTO for the federal government. And just in case you think those last two might know something about cybersecurity, being technical officers, they don't. They're policymakers. They don't have any expertise or experience in computer security. It's probably just favors to their buddies or something like that.
It's not nepotism. He's my brother.
I remember that one.
Oh, but you know, it's not surprising because hey, the DNC is pretty much, you know, one of the most. I am gonna say this. You know, I used to be a Democrat. Always, you know, like the Democrats they had no problems with that, but yet after like at least past 8 years, I've seen like my affair with the Democrats and the left in general going further and further away from it. It's amazing how that has changed, and just supposedly after President Obama, the first black president, I should have been all in and be happy, but after I'm like,
but I thought Clinton was the first black president.
Yeah, and I just sat there and I'm sitting here and I'm like, I feel like I've gotten just another just a sale of empty goods and everything, and then all this other stuff about this is cybersecurity board because they got hacked and they basically tried and worked to screw Bernie out of the the whole trying to get the seat become the Democratic nominee, and calling him basically an atheist, which is to me hilarious. Like even though this person's done everything to help cause in minority stuff, they call him we need to discredit him, call him an atheist, and just that and all this other stuff, and it worked, and Hillary's in, and now the leaks coming out, they're going to hire, and they're hiring people that have the cybersecurity. There's all this stuff, but yet they have no idea what they're doing. They just hire nepotism and people who they have no idea what they're talking about. I would not be surprised.
They might be intelligent people who'd be able to make some positive contributions, so I don't really have a problem with them being on the board per se, but you need some cybersecurity experts along there with them.
Yes, you need to have people who know what is cybersecurity, what is the entire basics. You need people who are so, and the people that got in are good in their fields, but you need to get someone good in this important field. At least one or two people in there, because if you don't, well, it doesn't matter how smart they are and how brilliant. If they don't know anything about cybersecurity, guess what's going to happen? You're going to have another big leak, and people are going to be like, and they're going to be sitting there like, well, we have a cybersecurity thing. Why did no one do anything? We had a board. Maybe we need another one.
Unless the real goal is just so they can advise them on cybersecurity policy, in which case actual cybersecurity experts might get in the way of some of the things they want to propose, like breaking our encryption with golden keys, that sort of thing.
And then we'll have more security leaks because hey, it's not like governments are always good with secrets, and look how they handle their finances and stuff. I mean, it's not like the money doesn't disappear or doesn't go into these boondoggles or anything like that. Oh no, man, they know what exactly they're doing.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Either they're stupid or they have more nefarious goals in mind. Either way, the DNC is floating to the top as this week's extraordinaire. That was Daniel Wilcox asleep at the wheel, everyone.
Sorry.
I took off my headphones during that.
My mic was off, so.
But 10. A 10, by the way. A 10.
All right, thanks for joining me, guys.
No problem.
Yeah, this has been Charles Thomas, Daniel Wilcox, and Jacob Morris. And thank you for listening. We should be back to a regular podcast next week. Until then, here's a quote from Kevin Mitnick. The government does things like insisting that all encryption programs should have a back door. But surely no one is stupid enough to think the terrorists are going to use encryption systems with a back door. The Bogosity podcast is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License.
So that part was pre-recorded.
Bogosity.
Well, that was fun.